So, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome, and thanks for coming by. And as well as of course, now that I'm staying in your place, I'm actually your guest. So it's not like I'm hosting this place. So, but again, so to introduce yourself, do you want to start off?
So I'm Beliz. I am a research scientist at Google AI working on language models. I've been living in the Bay Area for 10 years now.
10 years now?
Yeah.
So how's that going so far? Do you like it? What are some of the dislikes that you have about this place, or do you have anything particular in your mind that you would like to point out about this place for someone who's never been to this place?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I feel like as someone who lives in the Bay Area, you get that question quite a bit because for a lot of people, it is like the place to go, especially if you're in the tech, like if you're in the technology space, right? And I did all my schooling here as well, so it almost feels like a second home to me at this point. Like if I travel elsewhere in the States, whenever I'm coming back here, it feels like, oh, I'm going home. I mean, clearly it's a very happening place in terms of entrepreneurship. Like if you're an outdoorsy person, there's a lot of stuff to do. But maybe as like one complaint, you get to meet like one type of people here. Like obviously, like what I mean by that is like they're very like tech and work driven in a lot of the cases.
So they have a purpose behind for coming out here and staying over here. So it's more like tech oriented, and most of the people that you meet up around here are involved within the tech sector. Is that correct?
That's right. Even if like they were trained elsewhere, like say like they're a lawyer or like I don't know, like a teacher or something, somehow like if they move here, they get integrated in the tech circle like somewhat. Like they sometimes like don't even like do their own profession. And in terms of like I mean just like by the amount of people who are here, like a good chunk of them they have moved here for work. So it's not a place where you I don't know, move
just travel around and stuff like that.
Yeah, like so like the usual purpose around people moving is like about something about tech, basically.
Something about tech, okay.
Yeah.
So what is the tech sector? Like is it, for example, what people think of tech as is, I mean, of course, some people use this terminology, but a bunch of nerds sitting around a desk and they're on their computer all the time. They don't socialize. I think that's like one of those stereotypical things about the tech industry. Do you think, like, would you actually confirm that some way or another form it is true?
Yeah, so like I guess like what we call tech in every decade it changes quite a bit. Like, where like this place initially started with the semiconductor sector like in the 1950s or 1960s, like primarily. And now like what we call tech is mostly software companies actually.
Yeah.
And now like there's like essentially if you're doing like financial tech like Robinhood or like Coinbase, like that's also like considered tech, like although it's like an adjacent thing. Like there's like their primary product is based on tech. In terms of stereotypes regarding tech, I mean, it is not false, I think. Like, like if you like see like one of the campuses of one of the any of the tech, like large tech companies, yes, you will see people playing beach volleyball, like at any time of the day. Like you will like see like people getting coffee and baristas and like people like ambitiously discussing things like in front of whiteboards. So it's like, and it's primarily men. So I think a lot of these stereotypes are true, but I think it's evolving like in the past few years.
So there's more of a social face that's actually being more involved within the tech sector. So it's not just people sitting around a desk, but more like now people are more, for example, getting into combat sports. Like, for example, that Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg thing.
That's true.
And what do you think of that, by the way? Are there any gossips around that? Who would win in that scenario?
I think there are a lot of memes about it, like everywhere. Like for example, like at Google, there's this like internal meme tool that like a lot of the employees look at as like a source of entertainment, is like usually like full of these things like, oh, like, is Zuck gonna win, like this and this. So
Zuck, yeah.
it is certainly a thing. I mean, like in terms of like, I mean, I think in a way like it's a show of like masculinity in some way, because like these people love power, right? So like it's in a different form. It's not in the usual form that we see in like Wolf of Wall Street or something.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like defined a bit differently in the East Coast or like in other places of the world. Like versus here, I feel like you instead of like attraction in the like usual sense, they usually are proud of like how much they can lift, like the physical limit of how much they can fast, like how long they, like it's like more like durability.
Who can go the distance when it comes to going head to head?
Exactly.
With every aspect of life.
Exactly.
So I mean, at least my theory surrounding that topic was that these people have proven that within the tech sector, in terms of like financial means, that they're ahead of like 99.9% of the population, right? So what it comes down to is where they lack, and where the stereotype comes in, is basically the physical prowess of that these people can attain or maintain. So I think in the past, at least, like I said, there was this general stereotype of, you know, people in tech sector being like maybe not really being fit or not being really involved in other aspects of things. But as you said, I think there was a transitional period, and now there's even like discussions of like people actually battling physically.
Right.
So is that like something like they're making up for something that, as generally people involved in that sector, is that what it is? It's like, oh, there's that one space that we weren't really trying to compete in, and now we just have to show that.
That's an interesting viewpoint. Like I never thought of it that way, but I think it makes sense. It is certainly like, you know, in the last like maybe 5 to 10 years though, like if you were to ask someone like, can you like draw me a tech bro, like I think a lot of it like would draw someone with like, you know, like who's built basically, who's like really fit. Like I think it's becoming like quite common and popular, or like something to look up to in the sector.
So something that, you know, at least has been taking place in the past. But again, coming back to that, you know, question, who would actually win? I mean, I think it's not, the fight is not going to happen, but at least who, if you had $10,000, right, or you're gonna bet your life savings on someone, who you going with? You going with the kingpin of Tesla, or going with the Zuck?
I think I actually would go with Zuck. Yeah.
Why would that be? Is it because he's more involved in jiu-jitsu and more in martial arts?
No, I think just like the way of like viewing things. I think Elon, like, I mean, rightfully so, he has this like confidence that he's like conveying at all times, and like I think he has a like I mean like a less of a self-reflection on certain things. Like he always thinks he's right in a way.
Okay.
Like versus I think I mean, I did like a brief like 4-month internship in like Facebook too. Like I actually did see Mark like talking in like internal meetings and stuff, and I think he is actually like surprisingly good at like acknowledging things when he's wrong. So like I think his like attitude, like not like regardless of like where they start or like what they can do, like already, like I think he would take this very seriously.
And he would prepare for it, and how do you at least imagine the fight going as? Because like, do you think there's gonna be a lot of like punching, or is it just gonna be outright wrestling? Do you think they're just gonna go, you know, just swinging all rounds, or is just putting on a show, like, and people are just? I think that would be, by the way, the biggest pay-per-view in the history of like sports.
1000%.
1000%, right?
Yeah.
They're coming out like, you know. or their soundtracks. And I think the music that they would come out into the arena. Probably Mark would choose something like more techno. Like I think, and
yeah.
you know, Elon Musk would go with the rock thing. I think 80s, 90s rock. That's how I would imagine it. You see this guy.
My guess is as good as yours, I think.
I think at least Elon Musk was commenting about how he would how he would just lay on top of him and not move.
I think I've seen some pictures on Twitter or
on
X.
Twitter.
Sorry. Yeah.
On X, oh, yeah, X. But yeah, I mean, I think I would definitely buy that at least.
Yeah.
I would buy that.
Who would you bet on?
That's a good question. I would go with Zuckerberg because I know he's been hanging out with these MMA fighters, UFC fighters, and I think he's been taking it seriously. I've heard that he actually had a surgery as well, so I don't think they're gonna be competing anytime soon. But if they do, I would put my life savings on Zuckerberg.
We agree on this.
Yeah, it's totally another thing. But I mean, at least my second question that comes to my mind is, what do you think of the next phase of the tech industry? Where is it generally going towards? Is it going to be more against software based, or is there going to be like what do you see in the at least 10, 20 years?
That's an interesting question. I think it's being like, especially after the arrival of ChatGPT, this is getting debated quite a bit, which I think rightfully so. I think the job descriptions of a lot of people will change quite a bit. In particular, in the more, like what we call like testing, for example, right now.
What do you mean by
like
testing?
A test engineer?
Test
basically.
engineer.
Like if you're doing your release, like just making sure things are going very smoothly. Like
so, like a manager at least. Like akin to a manager who's like managing the workflow instead of like building it.
They are building it. So like those test engineers, they're not building the system. They're sort of like making sure like things are running smoothly in the system, and like they have to write like very they still have to write code, but like I feel like these tasks unfortunately are going to be like, not unfortunately, like fortunately will be like super automated. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of these jobs will disappear. That's like that requires less of an input from human in terms of reasoning and like stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the like middle management is probably also going to disappear.
It's going to vanish.
Like again, like I think the role of like this like organizing things, handling things, or like communication is like a huge aspect, right, of like mm-hmm. middle managers. I think this will be distributed in a more like automated way, like that will decrease the number of mm-hmm. the people necessary. So I think the job, like overall, and also like the day-to-day jobs of the engineers, like software engineers, will change quite a bit too. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think we're gonna keep writing code the same way that we've been doing for mm-hmm. the past 20 years. I think it's gonna be a lot more about data, like how we understand the data, because data is the actual commodity, like in the age of AI. And like the software systems that we build around to like make it do things, I think will be handled by machines. So I think it's going to look very different in that way. In terms of software versus other things, I'm actually very hopeful about curious rather, about the biotech space. Like stuff around CRISPR, for example, like the gene editing thing. And also the startups around drug discovery, like I think is very interesting, essentially like automatically trying to figure out the configuration of drugs so that like you don't have to try out like 10,000 molecules to get to one, which is the actual ratio. Like, which means like you spend up to like $3 billion to actually like develop one drug.
Instead of doing that, at least you can optimize the process.
With AI, yeah.
You can do it with AI. Yeah. So you work with AI, you work at Google, and your day-to-day involvement is basically centered around the language modeling and, artificial intelligence. So do you think that at least specifically Google may head towards the biotech space? Are there any involvements in that? Are they like at least targeting that sector, or they want to just outright compete with ChatGPT and OpenAI?
Um, yeah, I mean that's a good question. Like healthcare has been a bet of Google for quite a number of years now, but like I would consider that less biotech and more like the healthcare as we know it right now. So like they do a lot of imaging like related things and distributing that to like third world countries, like to like they have some collaborations in Africa and like stuff like that. And also just like algorithms that like understands like medical images and like do something with them. Now they're entering into more of the medical language model space, like in like being able to read like health records and stuff.
Yeah.
What they're calling MedPalm. Like it can pass some of the exams that like medical doctors take and stuff like that. So like there's some involvement there. And with the recent merge with DeepMind, now like they actually yeah, now, well, I mean they were always in the Alphabet subsidiary, I guess, but like there's a lot of people who are interested in protein structure prediction with AlphaFold and stuff like that. So now like there's actually quite a bit of investment in that space as well. So like not in the places that I'm personally excited about, but yes, Google has some involvement.
So, what are the spaces that excites you the most, at least at you with your work at Google?
Oh, I have two different answers. In terms of language modeling, I think I'll say something, but in terms of in general, I find the drug discovery stuff very interesting, like
Okay.
that I described. But coming back to language models, the stuff that's sort of fascinating to me is the reasoning piece, right? Like, there's a lot of discussion now about like, oh, like are these models sort of just generalizing, like memorizing the data that like we feed them, train them with, or are they actually being like, are they able to generalize to unseen events or like unseen stuff in general, which is a huge debate now. Like nobody knows how to measure it. Like everyone has an idea about it, but like I'm actually really curious to understand and excited about if or like to what extent these models can reason.
Okay. And do you think, like, do you have this at least concern within Google, or at least with about your personal opinion, that when you're working around these things, there's a lot of exposure of personal data?
Yeah.
So, do you think that people at least have the sense of idea that may impede with the involvement in the process of these technological advancements that actually exposes a lot of these personal data that people, at least in the last 10 years, have been very much concerned with?
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry at least responding to this? Because I think that's at the helm of like the process. Every time, every at least once in 3 years, there's this great like large discussion surrounding the personal data, and a lot of people are actually very concerned about it. Some people, I mean, that you came across with, they're okay with giving all their personal data.
Spectrum, yeah.
But at the same time, there's so many people that they would not like to give at least the time of the arrival to their, let's say, car or their house, let alone about their just bodies, right? Yeah. So where do you see this going? Like, do you think that at least with Google or with generally with the tech space, do you think they're going to be gathering more and more personal data in order to optimize their systems? Because like you said, data is the new gold mine. Mm-hmm. Or would they work around another type of system where at least they can churn that type of data and then they can put it into use?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. Like from the technical standpoint, a lot of teams just want to even understand if it's possible. Like, is like the personal information encoded in these model weights that we're like releasing to the public? Like, is there a way to be able to hack the model such that it can retrieve like the initial data that like it was trained with, right? So like people like who work with differential privacy like looks into that space like quite a bit. And I think to some extent it could be possible, and we should, like, test these things to make sure this is like not a huge concern. So from the technical side, there exists a lot, like there's a lot of interest in this, basically, in terms of security side. From the regulation side, I think the government is getting essentially like paying more attention, rightfully so, to these technologies, and like wanna actually, I mean, Google has like a policy team, for example, that regularly meets with the White House now, and like they always did, but like in terms of AI stuff, they have to like talk about that now. So I think there's like efforts on like establishing regulations, and I think we're gonna see like more of that. Like, I mean, of course, like in the beginning, government will make mistakes, and like they'll do a law that doesn't quite make sense, or like that would like sort of like restrict the pace of the development of these technologies, and then they'll roll back. So like I think there's gonna be like some back and forth in terms of the regulation side. In terms of public sphere, I think, as you said, like we've had this discussion like
so many times, right?
So many times, and I don't know what the right answer is.
Okay. Well, then, at least, because I mean, in terms of like the great amount of money that is being generated in tech is actually about the gathering of personal data and bundling it and then selling it off to companies where they can at least utilize it in order to optimize their product offerings. So at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think the industry would be quite welcoming to the idea of not using any personal data in any sort of way.
Yeah.
Not just like about optimizing the systems and making it better, but just in terms of like you're talking about the cash flow. I mean, except for Apple, which Apple is heavily dependent on the hardware, even, and they're trying to actually basically transition into other areas of spheres so that they can reduce the amount of risk involved with it, especially China. They're building factories in India. But you talk about other tech industries, or the big tech, the FANG, like all of them, basically, except for at least Netflix and Apple, all of them are, in terms of they're centered around ads. So I don't think they're going to be giving up that easily. Maybe, usually, historically speaking, I believe that there needs to be a great amount of stressful elements in terms of like about a great large event that captures the large contingent of people. Then maybe the government steps in urgently and hastily and says, okay, we need to shut this down, right? Do you think that will ever happen?
Hard to say. Yeah.
Because they can, right? They can. I mean, government can just press the button if they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess like European Union is like an interesting example here, because a lot of like the data requirements are actually like a lot more strict in Europe. And then like the companies, like all of these companies like that you mentioned, actually go through a lot of lawsuits because of that.
And they just pay it out, right?
And they just pay it out. But like, I can, see, like, I mean, Italy banned ChatGPT for like a couple months. Like they can do these things.
And do you think that this will become widespread, at least in
no,
the short term?
So. I think it's like mutually beneficial. So no.
Governments are taxing that money that they're earning, and these companies employ a lot of people. They bring a lot of tax dollars, so it makes sense for both parties.
Yeah, I mean, it exactly. Yeah, with the current structure, I don't see this happening.
Okay. Well, let's move on to more, let's say, theoretical and more fun questions, right?
All right.
So, this one thing that I had in my mind, and I know sometimes I kind of get a little cray-cray about it, not in the sense of like I actually, put those thoughts out in the environment, but at least I have this one particular thing. Is it possible that we are living in some sort of an AI-generated reality? Like, is it possible? Because here's the thing, hear me out. So imagine that now you have lived all this life, right? You went to school, you went to college, to Berkeley, and then you did your internships. You have this personal development phase, you experienced stuff, But here's the thing: how do you know that literally these things happened, except for inside of your memory? And of course, generally it's out. Like you can prove it. You can be like, "Hey, look, I've been here. Here are these people that can attest to it." But how do you know these things are actually happening? Like you can literally download these things. Let's say you woke up, right? How do you know you actually lived through those experiences? And how do you know that this is not actually a simulated environment that makes you think that you went through those things, and those people that you've gone in and like experienced stuff with? How do you know that it's a reality? Do you think this is a possibility?
First of all, this is like totally a question your brother would have asked me
Oh, yeah.
on one of our
Yeah.
first dates. So,
Not a question to ask in a first date.
not
It's like,
first. I
what
said
type
like
of-
one of the.
What type of coffee do you like? Hey, do you think we're fucking like AI generated stuff? And it's like, no, I'm okay with you. What was your name again? No, it's like not a good thing to leave an impression on.
I said like type of question. I didn't say this specific.
Oh, the type of questions. Okay. I think that's more like after the initial phase and after you get to know each other. Okay, because you put on a show there, right? And you're like, okay, I'm crazy in these things. So what's your answer to these things? I think you need to go through the stages to put that stuff out there. But yeah, what do you think of this?
I guess like my answer is like, even if it is a quite good one. So like it is pretty convincing that it's actually happening.
But that's the thing. This is the only reality that we're living in. We don't know the actual reality if that's true. So how, like for us, it's convincing. Maybe for the people who've developed the system, it's actually really boring or exciting the other way. Maybe because of that they developed it. They're like, oh, our reality freaking sucks. So we just we just like a bunch of freaking nerds got together. They're all on like antidepressants, and they're like, all right, let's do this, gentlemen. You know what? I got a bunch of Red Bull on the table. Let's fucking press that button, and boom, here we are.
I don't know. Like again, like I think even if that is the case, maybe I don't mind it too much. So like,
yeah,
I don't have a.
There's not much that you can do about it.
Yeah.
Right. You cannot prove it, disprove it.
You gotta just roll with it. Yeah.
Roll with it.
Yeah.
And how do you roll with it?
Yeah, I like it.
Continue the journey.
Let's move forward. Yes.
Okay, all right. So then, what about the aspect of actually us creating a simulation like that?
Like a possibility of this happening, or I mean, okay, like let's be real. Like robots can't even fold laundry right now. So like we should be like we should pat ourselves in the back because of like all the good stuff that we've been doing. But I don't think like we're like near like whatever like they call AGI or like whatnot. Like I think there's a lot of things that we don't understand. So.
But once I believe we hit that point, that means that it is actually doable. And someone may have actually done it before us, which brings another discussion, or either some people would say pessimistic type of discussion.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. I mean, they are trying to create the metaverse, so.
It's like, you go out to this party and you think you don't know anyone out there, and then you see someone like slipping some it's like a Christian community gathering, and you see someone putting a little tequila in their coffee, and you go, that dude has done that before. So it's not like you're like,
I like this analogy.
You're like, oh, that dude has done that a week ago. Okay, this is not like he's a regular in this. So it's that kind of a thing. Like if we actually done this, I think people are gonna be sitting down and go, oh shit, someone may have done it before us. So
Inception, yeah.
And then they maybe had that discussion. And then the other people had that discussion. And then at one point, maybe they just dropped the subject, or then I don't know what they did with that shit. Like, I don't know. Maybe this discussion has happened before. But, all right, here's the thing. So, about like you've seen Matrix, right?
Yeah.
So you work around with AI and language modeling, and you know.
I see it coming.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. What are, like, at least in that sense, what are the agents represent in that type of like security aspect when it comes to the AI models? Because there's a lot of security involved with it. They're trying to contain any type of, like, let's say when you type in the ChatGPT, right? How do I kill myself? If you type it in,
yeah.
right? Or if you type it in, how do I, let's say, build an AR-15? I don't think it's going to give you a response, right? So
yeah, they're controlled for that kind of stuff.
Right,
yeah.
right. So do you think that it is ethical in the sense of, like, because here's the thing, I believe it always starts off as to secure the platform, but then ends up as securing the discussion. So it always starts off as, oh, we don't want people to involve in bad things, but then it goes, oh, this type of thought pattern is actually bad, so we're not going to let that happen. That's what happened with Twitter Space, right? That was at least one of the purposes of Elon Musk acquiring Twitter, right? Formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
So then these thought patterns start becoming like, oh, no, that's a bad thing. We're back. So again, we were discussing about AI. We were discussing about the thought of simulation, Elon Musk versus Zuck, and many things surrounding Google's research and your involvement in the AI industry. So let's just I'd like to switch up to more, like, at least personal questions. So my question would be, what are the 3 things that you want to leave a mark on?
Oof. Like in AI or?
Just generally. Could be anything about your work, about your personal life.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting question.
Like, what do you want to be known as? Like, when, let's say, someone who doesn't really know you, when they're describing you, it could be your work, it could be, let's say, about your personal life.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say the first and foremost thing is, how many people in total have you touched or impacted in some way? I really enjoy I mentored like probably like more than 50 people at this point, like who are in the earlier stages of their career, and like a lot of the like maybe like 5 people out of like this many people like actually stayed in my life in like as a mentee, like, or like it's also like the reverse relationship where I was a mentee, like I don't know, like I've been in touch with my college professor for 10 years now. But like similarly, I've really enjoyed the process of like mentoring, like affecting people's lives, really connecting with them, maybe like showing them a way or like a possibility that they themselves haven't seen. I really enjoy like research mentoring. So like I think impacting people in a way of guiding them is very interesting to me, and this is something that I would want to be remembered as.
So at least guiding would be the first thing. What would be the second and the third thing? Why don't we keep going? I'm just gonna close the door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second thing is something that's tangible to my home country, Turkey, I think. Something that like people, like a lot of people didn't think of, and me spending time outside like helps me understand, explore, and perhaps like bring, right? So like that would be another thing. Like it could be about like technology, it could be about just like some insight, like something, I don't know.
At least, would you say representing your country and bringing valuable things back to your home country? Would you say that as a second thing, at least in that sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the third thing?
I think I would like to, I really would love to be remembered as a good friend, like someone who like truly cared about people, and like people who, like a lot of people who've seen my human side, like in some way, like I was a good friend to them. Like this is like a type of person I guess I want to be remembered as.
Being a good friend. That's a very valuable thing. Most certainly. Because that's one of the things I think that most people are not really putting much thought into it,
Yeah.
or that most people are actually maybe not really developing themselves, marinating themselves within that realm. Because that's one of those things that will matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's great to have a lot of fame, money, power. At the end of the day, one way or another form, that person knows if people actually respect him because who he or she is, or they respect that person because of what they have, or what the car they drive, or the knowledge they have. So it's a very important aspect. I think you put it well, in that certain aspect.
Yeah, I really think it's a very important thing, and I think a lot of people do not realize how important it is. Like in a lot of ways, they want to like put the blame on like something else about their life, like when in reality they're just really alone and miserable. Like I think human beings were meant to be surrounded by other humans. Like I don't think we were meant to like stay in the same room and look at the computer for like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I don't think people realize how important it actually is and how much it impacts them.
Is that people didn't just realize like, oh, we ourselves are going to be able to survive in this world. No, it was more like people just coming together and doing the hardship, like going through the hardship all together and realizing how to actually overcome those obstacles. So again, I think being a good friend, being a good member of the society is very important. It's very important in the sense of like actually even at the end of the day, how you define yourself is not with the things that you have, but it's with the things that you're embedded with. So you're definitely right about that. Where do you think you need to develop yourself in? Like, where is it that you tend to say to yourself, hey, I think I may need to make some adjustments?
In terms of work or in terms of in general?
General.
So I'm gonna describe like a feeling almost. So like one theme that I've seen throughout my life is that like I think I always put the most priority under being successful, basically. Like that's pretty much like how I define myself and like how I like took certain actions or like how I behaved like when I was giving like few like different options. So I think I want to move that needle down to okay, like there are other important things in life too, like in terms of like physical health or like mental health and stuff like that. I think I mean, not that I didn't care about these things, but I think I always like put like 90% of the importance under like being successful. So that's something I would like to work on.
Mm-hmm. So that particular aspect is at least one of the things that you actually would like to work on. Okay. So what is then the purpose of life for you? Why are you here?
Again, I think like I sort of like answer similarly to one of your previous questions is like I don't care either way. Like I don't think there's a purpose in my life. I don't think it's that important. I think it's just like random. Like we're just like lucky like to be here out of all the possibilities as ourselves. And I don't think there needs to be a purpose. I mean, it's a good thing to have a like define a purpose yourself, but I don't think like that purpose was delivered to me in any way. Like I don't think it needs to exist.
So you can actually maintain, or at least in one way or another, ensure the continuity of your work, of your character development, without any purpose-driven elements.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, do you think that purpose at least needs to exist? Because now you answered it like this. So do you think like purpose is actually one of those things that can drive someone to achieve something, or do you think like without purpose, if you actually put it in your mind and you actually just work for it, you can achieve that?
I mean, depends on the thing that you want to achieve, I think. But like, I think in general, yes, it is very helpful to have a purpose. Like, in fact, like, there was this phrase in the Valley, like, that people say neurodivergent, like, essentially, like, being, like, almost like neurologically sick to be, like, so focused on, like, one thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, something wrong with you. You can get, like, not, like, wrong, but, like, different. So you can be, like, extremely obsessive on, like, one thing. So I think to achieve, like, some people just, like, see it that way, right? Like, they're like, oh, like, I would want to, like, live in this world, like, this form of reality. So I'm just going to, like, make it happen. This is my purpose in life, which I respect. But yeah, I think to achieve, like, large things that affect the society outside of your immediate sphere, having a purpose is helpful for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So then, at least you can say that the purpose is one of those important factors that needs to be interwoven with what you're doing, but not necessarily a thing that needs to exist or needs to needs to be out there. You can do without it, but it's good to have it by your side.
I think so. Yeah.
If there's a will, there's a way. At least you're saying in that sense. Okay. And at least I had this one more question before closing, and I don't want to take much of your time, but that would be, how do you see the future? Is it optimistic or pessimistic? Which side are you on?
I mean, I'm an optimist, I think, in general. So
so you see better outcomes for the human civilization?
Yeah, I do think so. Like, I mean, I recently read a book called Factfulness, and like it was essentially like talking about like how people usually see things worse than they actually are. It's just like, how we perceive the current society. But if you actually looked carefully about the specific development in like specific areas, it is going upwards in many ways. In terms of just like how many people are fed, like how many people have like an actual home, like the literacy ratios, like stuff like that. Like if you look at the overall, like I think it's going in the correct direction. Like of course there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's clearly in the wrong direction, but I think the overall direction is in the positive.
Overall, at least in the overall sense, is a positive thing. And do you think AI will get us there?
I do think AI will play a role in all of this. I don't know.
Just like the Industrial Revolution, for example, in the, let's say, 100, 200, 300 years later, in history books, AI, do you think AI is going to be perceived as something that, furthered the optimism of people and furthered the advancement of human civilization, or something that actually has taken away from what makes a human?
Yeah.
And geared more towards negativity of certain aspects.
Oh God, I mean, I'd like to think that it is, it'll be remembered as a positive thing. I do think it'll be written in the history books. Like, I do think it'll be a milestone.
Who is a person that you look up to?
Oh, so many people.
Or at least, is there anyone that you look up to?
Yeah, so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, I usually, see an aspect in one person that I'm really impressed by. Like, in some people it might be just like intelligence, and some people it might be like how they interact with other people and stuff, or like how they got there, or like their resilience. Like I'm very impressed by resilience usually. So like I usually like have like something. So there's like a bunch of different people. Like I can't like name a single person. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who I look up to.
It was a great discussion, and thank you again for coming by. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.